I feel like this kind of really encapsulates a lot, basically, of what was happening in the moment. You know, it's the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot, this giant upheaval, you know, politically, socially, and it's just right in the middle of the city, and where all the action, most of the action was taking place. So just a little bit of background for me. I'm an MFA candidate at Tyler School of Art, majoring in ceramics, and I actually deferred last semester. So I just finished up my third semester, and I'll be graduating in December. My thesis show will be October 20th here in Philadelphia. But in undergrad, I didn't do art, or I didn't go to school for art anyway. I got a BS in philosophy from University of Wisconsin. And then a little side information, I did 4 years of marching band, and most of my ceramic work experience was outside of school. But I do have 13 years of clay experience. I started in high school with a great program at West High School in Madison, Wisconsin, under the great Phil Lyons, who's an amazing potter, ceramic artist, and teacher. And yeah, most of my work up to starting grad school was focused on the potter's wheel. But today I'm going to be focusing on my photography. And again, this is the just focusing on my time at the protest last summer. This I think is just one of my like absolute favorite photos that I took last summer, and just like the gaze of like the young woman holding up the banner wrecked, and captures the energy of this moment. And what I really also loved about this is the role of the artist, and how we can operate in these settings. We can create change. And I just love the idea of this like handmade banner, and the directness of this, the message on it. And I think what was really powerful about this, especially, is that this was following a very violent day on June 1st in Philadelphia, where a bunch of protesters, including myself, were tear gassed and attacked on the highway. And this was the protest directly after that. So I thought this was just like a really powerful moment and statement. No idea who this is. It was just like I think a great photo. So just move this. Sorry. No, go back. So following the murder of George Floyd, I began documenting the protests in Philadelphia. I had just taken like my first like photography class starting in January of 2020, and as part of like my grad school experience. And once the shutdown happened, it was basically my only means of like a creative outlet. I lost access to my ceramics studio. And so I really was kind of just like lost. I was like, I didn't kind of know what to do with myself. But I just kept on doing photography. I kept on walking around the neighborhood, and just kind of made it like a habit of just like leaving the house with my camera. And then once, the protest started in Philadelphia, I decided to bring my camera with me and start documenting. And I really wanted to focus on, how can I amplify, like not just document, but document in the way that's amplifying the voices and the goals of, what was happening in the streets. And, I often am thinking about how do I capture the energy of the moment and make it move forward. One of the really popular sayings at the protest is like, this isn't a moment, this is a movement, And so it just, the idea of longevity, how can you capture a moment so people can really understand what was happening at that time in that space, and kind of really like feel like the energy from that moment, and how do we like capture it in a way that like captures it in a little ball, and like you can pass it on to the, you know, next generation or the next people who want to experience, want to learn more about what was happening. And, you know, and so again, like being an artist, I think about like what our role is in these type of situations. And I think that, you know, as artists, we're often, you know, trying to reflect the times and the spaces around us, and uplift, you know, voices that normally, you know, don't have like the opportunity to like have all these eyes on you, you know, whether you're in a gallery or doing like talks like this. And so, yeah, I just wanted to like I think a lot about how like what role I can play, and how I can push these ideas these forward, you know. So I was really lucky to have like 7 of my photos be featured in the June 22nd issue of the New Yorker, with an article that was written by David Remnick, who's the editor-in-chief of the New Yorker, and had these like 7 like full page spreads, and it was just like a really wild experience, definitely a turning point in my career, which I wasn't expecting to come from photography. And yeah, I can talk more about that later, but so this was the first image in the New Yorker, and this just shows protesters at the end of a long day of marching, laying down for 8 minutes and 46 seconds for in honor of George Floyd. And I think this is a particularly powerful moment, because for one, it was a moment of silence, and it was at the end of a really long day, a really hot day of marching. And so you're laying on the ground, it's hot, it's uncomfortable, and just having that silence just hang in the air, especially, you know, after everybody's yelling and screaming for hours and hours, to have that like moment of silence and just like be completely present in your body for that amount of time. It's like such a long time. And to think about an officer, you know, then to have his knee on your neck for that amount of time, you know, I think it was just a really powerful moment. And you know, a lot of people got up, you know, crying from this moment, because it was just really powerful. So this is what I talked about earlier on June 1st. And this was shortly after we had gone on to, the march had gone onto the highway. And we were met very quickly with police in riot gear, in armored vehicles, and they were shooting tear gas at us from like a turret on top of like an armored vehicle. And people were being maced, shot with rubber bullets, just beaten by the police. And I was towards the back of the group at the time, and so in most of the protesters, we got off the highway safely, well, relatively safely, and then so after I kind of recovered from tear gas a little bit, I started walking down the street, and I realized these people were trapped up against the wall. And so opposite of this fence is a big group of protesters who are trapped up against a wall, still on the highway, by police who are still shooting them with tear gas or bullets. And this fence, like, you can't really tell from this angle, but there's a concrete wall that drops down like 8 more feet on the other side. So they're like really like, people are literally climbing on top of each other, pushing each other over the top of the fence as they're getting hit with pepper spray and tear gas and rubber bullets. So this was just like an absolutely like horrendous scene. I mean, the New Yorker did like a really good video investigation of this of what happened this day. And you guys can check that out for yourself. Maybe I can find the link and put it in the chat a little bit later, but yeah, it was truly terrible. And shortly after taking this photo, I took a few more photos, and then they had shot tear gas onto our side of the fence. So we had to, the people who were like helping these people get across over the fence, like had to abandon basically the fence. So this is May 30th. This was the first day of protests in Philadelphia. And this was a police car that was set on fire. And it's on Vine and Broad. And this was something that had happened basically after the protest had been basically stopped by police, and then things escalated from there. The march had gone from the Philadelphia Museum of Art down to City Hall, and then it was coming back up Broad Street. And then when they got to Vine, there was a giant police presence. And that basically tried to stop the protesters from marching any further. And that's where things really like escalated. And then eventually this cop car got set on fire. Yeah, and then yeah, and I didn't really realize what was happening, and then I saw a ton of smoke coming up, and I ran over, and I just got a few pictures of this car, and then it started like exploding, like these big explosions started coming out of the car, and then I was just like, I gotta get out of here. So I got out of there shortly after that. But, so this was on June 3rd, and this again, it was like, it was so wild. Like this was a very long day of protesting. Like this march started at Temple University, and I don't know if people are familiar with the geography of like Philadelphia, but Temple's in North Philly, and then they marched down to the PMA, and then down to City Hall, and then down to like the Liberty Bell, back up to City Hall, and then all the way back up Temple, and that's where the march ended. And that is like a very long day. So this was the end of that day, and these were some like young protesters who, like, you know, after that crazy day on the highway, you know, they wanted to keep the marches going. And these are not experienced, you know, organizers. These are just like young people who just want, like, we're not about to let the energy die down after one day of violence. And they were, you know, to their credit, protesters peaceful and organized. They were making sure people were fed, got water. They would be stopping in the shade as they were going on because it was very hot that week. And yeah, it was just like an incredibly inspiring moment to see, you know, how these young people were reacting to how the police and the military that was currently occupying Philadelphia at that point. So this is back to May 30th, the first day of the protests. And this was riot police who had showed up to the scene. This is the opposite side of the same intersection where that cop car got set on fire. And basically there was a line of bike cops that were there, and then these guys were kind of down the street, and they're like warming up, you know, stretching before with their clubs before, you know, they tried to charge into the crowd. And so they started kind of marching over, started like basically like jogging over, like they were about to just like run into the crowd. And so like the bike cops, they split open, and these guys are basically just about to charge right into us. And then all these people just started yelling, you know, white bodies to the front, white bodies to the front. And all these young white women that you can see, they're very small, jumped in front of me and locked arms and stopped these dudes in their tracks, and they wouldn't go any further. And it was crazy. Like I was like, it was also really smart because, you know, like, what would it look like if these big burly dudes were just beating on these like little white girls who are probably $1.15 a piece. And so it's just like this really radical use of, white privilege and having like a clear understanding of what that is. And it, plays out in real time. Because, obviously they wouldn't have a problem, beating me over the head or, other people that are in the crowd. So, and then this is just like a beautiful moment. This was on June 1st. And I think this is one of the most powerful days of the whole summer. And this was the weekend following that terrible day on the highway. And this is the end of the protest. So you get down to the end, and it was ending at the PMA, and there was this giant circle. There's a big cipher of breakdancers, and they were putting on the most amazing show. And and some of the breakdancers' kids were also there breakdancing, and they were incredible. They're doing backflips, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And this girl is the daughter's one of the breakdancers, and she was, just doing her thing out there. But this was like a really cool photo because, I just love like the dude in the background. He's like holding up his fist, and the movement of her body, the hair, like in the shadow on the ground, I think is just, it's just like, this is a really special moment. And so this was the same day, this was the same protest. And as you can see, the crowd was just insane that day. It was huge. And they estimated 100,000 people showed up. And this was just an incredible day. It was a very powerful day. And, by the time we started marching, I'm standing basically at the very top of the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And if you don't know where that is, that's basically where Rocky's standing, at the end of his like training montage when he's like running up the top of the stairs, so that's basically where I'm standing. And you can see City Hall down there in the distance, and basically the crowd stretched all the way back to City Hall by the time we started marching. So it was a very powerful day. So then later on the summer, you go to more of these things, you start learning more about, the history and the trauma that lives in people's everyday lives in Philadelphia. And one of those traumas that still holds a lot of, power to this day is the MOVE bombing that happened in 1985. That was carried out by Philadelphia police. And, crazy enough, it happened under the very first Black mayor of Philadelphia, who was a Democrat. And they dropped a bomb that killed 11 people, including 5 children. And so if you don't know about the MOVE bombing or the MOVE organization, I highly recommend that you look it up. There's a really good documentary that's called, I think it's called like Let It Burn or something like that, or it's something like that. Maybe I can also look at the link for that. But the MOVE group is still, MOVE organization is still around. And many of its members who were arrested, back then are still in prison. Many of them have been freed, but they're still more in prison, and including Mumia Abu-Jamal, who is probably one of the more well-known people who are still in prison. But yeah, this is something that the MOVE group was part of the people who were, and Mike Africa Jr., who's actually born in prison, to one of the MOVE family members, was had a big, was very active in helping organize and speaking at different protests and marches over the summer, over the course of the summer. And this protest in particular was to protest the MOVE bombing in Philadelphia. So then, I think one of the things that's like really important in this whole aspect is not just to the document the Black suffering, but the Black power and celebration and joy that also was taking place over the last summer. And one of those moments was the Juneteenth celebration that happened at Malcolm X Park. In Juneteenth, if you don't know, it celebrates the freeing of the last slaves in Texas on June 19th, 1865. And this was a celebration, this particular celebration was organized by multiple Black radical groups, but mainly the Black Lives Matter Philadelphia chapter. And this picture right here is a Black elder who opened up the ceremonies by burning sage and pouring libations for the people who have had like basically the ancestors, but also the people who have been taken at the hands of police. And so this included, a lot of like really amazing performances. And this is one of my favorite photos from the performances, that there's this trio of breakdancers who, I don't even know what you call them breakdancers. They're just hip hop dancers that just put on an incredible performance. And this is like one of my favorite shots of that. So talented. So then moving on, there was like a really busy day. It was on July 4th. There had 3 different protests that I went and photographed, and just like very long day, another very hot day. But I think this is one of the most powerful moments of that day. And this was a protest that was put on by the Black Trans Assembly for Abolition. And they just had this like really amazing, like powerful protest. They had a truck that was just like, had giant speakers that was on this truck, and it was like kind of just like leading everybody down the street. And the speakers and the organizers were Black trans women who it's very powerful, because one of the things the Black community is like, we say all like Black Lives Matter, but then it's just like the people who are often left out of the conversation is Black, queer, and LGBTQ people. So I think it's just like something that gets overlooked a lot, and it's just like it's just very, very powerful moment to see these people come and stand up and say, enough is enough. And I think the most cool thing about it was like, there was a big military flyover right over the Liberty Bell. And so we're standing, like the march came and ended right at the Liberty Bell, just like right at the time that this military like flyover is happening. So you got all these, like families just hanging out in this like Liberty Mall, whatever. Wow, like their party was just like, it's like how many millions of dollars was spent on this flyover that happened like, that took like 5 minutes. And it was just kind of ruined by this, Black trans collective. I just thought that was just really funny and awesome. And also this is just a dope shot because it's a dope shirt. And yeah, there's just a good 2 more shots from that protest. So then here another fun story was I went to so this is a shot from the protest that happened outside of the Fraternal Order of Police Chapter 5. So if you don't know the Fraternal Order of Police, they are probably the root of our problems when it comes to policing in this country. And in my opinion, the first thing that needs to happen is to abolish the Fraternal Order of Police. They're the ones who protect all these, fucking like racist cops, basically, with like no regard for the victims or the damage they're causing in communities, especially the Black community. So anyway, so Mike Pence was talking at the Fraternal Order Police. So there was a small group that went out there to protest it. And it was a very scary day because this particular area of Philadelphia is very racist and very like pro-cop military, And yeah, it was just it was like, it had, definitely experienced a lot of racism on this day. And there was only a small group of us out there. So like, we were out there protesting, but it's very far away from this like center city, where most of the protests took place. And so we were probably only had like at maximum 30 people, like most likely it was more like 20 people. And there was like 200 pro-Trump people there. And these are pro-Trump people who are specifically either families of police officers or ex-police officer, ex-military. And they were not happy at all that we were there. So this was like very scary day. And you can see, this is the first picture. You can see like they were just very happy to see me. I didn't say a word to these people. I just walked up and I was just like taking pictures. And some of these pictures I was taking from very far away. It had this like really photo, whatever lens, had a really big, huge lens. So I was standing very far away from a lot of these people. This one I was up closer, but I definitely didn't say anything. I just walked up and they just didn't appreciate my presence. Just really friendly folks. And so yeah, that was that day. A more positive note. There was a few different protests or marches rather that were put on by Black youth, and which was like so inspiring. And if you know anything about Philadelphia, like the education system here is just not what's up. It's very like sad, and like I've taught in some of the schools as part of the Claymobile at the Clay Studio, and it is just like a very it's a very sad like circumstance that a lot of these kids you're having to grow up in or try to be educated in. And but the students are very aware of what this kind of situation that they're in, and they don't take it lying down. So there's just a very beautiful like movement, like Black youth that are fighting for their own future. And so it's just inspiring to be get to come and see these protests. And another thing that was really cool about the protests is a lot of times we were being led by different drum lines that are in Philly, and that's just like one of the most dope, like fun things ever. It's like there's the protests, and then there's protests that are led by drum lines, and it's no comparison at all. It's the energy is completely different, and yeah. And it just takes up so much more space, but it also gives like such an amazingly awesome vibe to the whole feel of the movement, where it's not quite as like dreary or sad. It's more uplifting and like empowering, to be led by, instead of just being like just railing against something. It's like it just feels more positive and uplifting, and like you're doing something in a proactive manner, and it just brings that vibe. Yeah. So this photo is following the murder of Walter Wallace by police, and this was October 26th. Walter Wallace was having, basically like a mental breakdown, and when his family called the police to basically come like diffuse the situation, they ended up murdering him. And so this happened in West Philly, and this was one of the protests following that incident. And these are some of the leaders who've been organizing over the whole summer, and they're from the Black Lives Matter Philadelphia chapter. speaking there. And this is another shot from that same day. I thought was just really powerful. And that's basically all I had for today. Yeah. So I have so many photos. And like, yeah, it's just I don't know. I guess I could have put in more, but I don't know. I was like scared I was going to like go over time with as many photos I put in, but I guess I'm still doing okay. But we can start with questions, and I can maybe yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there is a question that came in while you were talking around how you were keeping the identities of the protesters protected and how that factor played into the way you process your art.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So especially at the beginning of the protests, there was a huge amount of concern over identity in the police tracking people through like social media and different things like that. And which has happened, and people have been arrested through that in Philadelphia. And so yeah, it's definitely a huge concern, and it was something I definitely was very aware of and thought about a lot. And I have a ton of photos that are more revealing of like who people are, what people are doing, and I really try to focus on the photos that I was putting up on my Instagram. In particular, I was very focused on only showing photos where you couldn't really tell like who the person was. I'd made sure I wasn't taking pictures of or posting pictures with like tattoos, kind of any attributes, or like not showing bare faces. If I take a picture of somebody that's with the mask on, and the pictures of people who aren't wearing masks, you can tell they're all organizers. So they're usually people who the cops are very aware of already. And I'm not taking pictures of people doing anything illegal, but like if you go to one of these protests, there's 100% of the time a cop there taking pictures of everybody in the crowd. And then there's also video cameras everywhere that are either the police are video, like have you on video, or there's just security cameras everywhere, that are capturing what's happening, especially if you're downtown in Center City. So that being said, like if you go to a protest, like that's the risk you're taking. Like you're on camera already somewhere. So that's just the reality. And so, a lot of people were just saying like, if you're going to go to these protests and you're worried about that, cover up everything, don't let any of your tattoos show. Cover up your face. If your hair is like some kind of thing to identify you, cover that up, like that. So that is a very like serious matter. And especially if you're, taking action type, that's like you're taking serious risks, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. But I wasn't definitely like, if they were gonna like catch somebody, it wasn't gonna be through, my feed. So, but I didn't also feel like I needed to go to the point of blurring every face out. Like I thought that was just like overkill. I think there's just needs to be a balance of like, of those type of considerations. And like, I just think that, if you see someone being arrested or beaten over the head and it's just a blurred face, you're not taking the same amount of like humanity from that experience, an emotional connection to what's happening, as you would seeing an actual person go through that. So yeah, that's just like my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Eva, did that answer your question? Or Eva, do you have another question, or anyone else for that matter? Yeah, we got a thank you from
Yeah, that definitely answers my question. And thank you for your response and this presentation.
Yeah, thank you for that question. It was a great question.
Isaac, I think it was interesting that you just mentioned, you know, if you're going to a protest, cover up anything that's really going to identify you. Do you have other suggestions for people that are looking to go out and be more active in protests?
Yeah, come prepared. The police do not fuck around, and you're not in a controlled environment, and you don't know what they're capable of. So I would just say, like, yeah, come prepared. Like, I would suggest bringing maybe like some sort of like goggles that are gonna, you know, that don't have vents on them, that's not gonna let tear gas in. A respirator. If you just have like, you know, a respirator, especially if you're a clay person, usually you have like a respirator with the filter on it. I would bring that. I bought, like, after experiencing tear gas on the highway, like I bought myself this professional ass like military like gas mask that's just like one giant shield mask that has like really good, that I have like respirators on there specifically for that type of thing. And then I would also bring like old random like respirators that I had lying around, just to hand out to people in case that happened, which ended up happening. I'd also bring spray bottle with water in it to get water out of people's eyes. And I watched videos on how to, or like I read stuff on how to like properly get tear gas out of people's eyes in one of those situations. And those are things that I did encounter and had to do at different protests. So yeah, I would just like, if you're gonna like want to go out and do stuff, I'm not saying, I mean, most of the time, like I want to say, and I also want to say like 90% of the time you're going to be fine and like nothing's going to happen, and you're just going to go out and you're going to march and you're going to say what you have to say, and then you're going to go home and it's going to be fine. And then there's just going to be those 1 or 2 times when it's not fine, and you don't know what people in the crowd are going to do. Also, like if you're having a protest and everything's going fine, and then, you know, one of these, I know some people like have different kind of political leanings, but one of these black bloc dudes start showing up and they just are like, hey, we're just gonna go throw bricks at the cops today. Okay. Or like, then it's like, okay, now things have escalated and you have to decide, do I want to stay for this or do I want to get out now while I still can? Because then usually things escalate from there. So yeah, I think that's just like one of the things you have to consider.
Yeah, I've heard multiple messages going out about the importance of listening to and respecting the organizers in these situations. Yeah.
Yes, I want to say something on that now that we brought it up, because this is something that really irks me and like rubs me the wrong way a lot. It's like all these Antifa kids, like sometimes, I mean, there's multiple instances over the summer where it was just like they were very hell-bent on just fighting the police, just like straight up, like, and they would show up in all their gear and like they'd be like 125 pounds, and I'm just like, you kids are gonna get your asses kicked, and and then you're gonna endanger all these black folks that are here and maybe not here to fight the police. And so there's multiple, especially what happened was there was this big protest, and I wish I should have put some, you know, photos up of it. There were 2 homeless encampments that were not just encampments, but protests over not having a safe place to live during a pandemic, and just not having, you know, a safe place to live, period. And they end up getting like 50 homes that are being put into like a housing trust for them, that they get to operate themselves, which was like a huge victory. It was a big win. You know, it wasn't everything that people wanted, but it was a big win. And But like during that time, there was multiple times, and there was actually like 2 weeks straight where they were threatening to come in with force with the police and forcibly push these people out of their encampments, which were like right in Center City in front of the PMA. So it was like it was an eyesore, you know, for the city or whatever, which was intentional, of course. But like when the cops were like saying, we're going to come in at 9 a.m. on this day, you know, a bunch of people would show up ready to, you know, basically defend the encampments, you know. But then all these like, you know, Antifa kids would show up and they were like running these drills, like training to like fight the police. And it was freaking these homeless people out, you know. Yeah. And so they were like, we have to leave. They're about to fight the cops. Like, I'm not going to fight the cops. And it's just like not taking into account, like, you have your own set of political priorities, but it's going right up against the actual people that you're claiming to be there to support. And it was making them feel literally unsafe to be there. So like, that being said, like and they did get called out by organizers, and it's just like, it's just one of those things where it's just like, you need to keep your eye on the prize and just like focus on what the task is at hand, which is making sure these people have a safe place to live, and to support them in whatever way you can, and not let your own political motives get in the way of that. And so yeah, those and that, like, that happened, and there's some other instances that it's just like, you know, is this for you, or is this for, you know, these Black lives that you're supposedly trying to protect? So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. That's definitely a really important message, and you've shared it in a couple different ways, including the story about white bodies up front.
Yeah, which is a great way to exercise that power, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a question in the chat about your presentation, and a kudos for your amazing photography capturing the atmosphere of the BLM protest. The question is if this presentation will be available for replay. So I would throw that question out. I also put up your photography Instagram link, but that doesn't necessarily answer the question.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't really planning on putting it up anywhere for replay. I mean, I can just post it. You are recording this?
We are recording the Zoom, and we'll post that online. So that would be one way to rewatch it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was like, I think that's just a great option. I wasn't really planning on, like, I mean, I can repost this on it.
You probably have a lot of this on your website as well, right?
Yeah, I could I have a lot of photos on my website, and yeah, and then I have a lot of stuff on my Instagram. Between those two places, you can probably see most of what I have and what I covered.
I'm just going to throw the link to the photography section.
Cool.
In here. Photography section, website. What other questions do we have, folks? Just randomly and out of curiosity, what did you play in marching band?
Oh, trumpet.
Couldn't believe you left that detail out. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I think I always do, because people always ask me what instrument do I play, but
oh really?
I never think it's like the first thing I should like share and all.
Mm-hmm. Isaac, you recently finished work with a group of people on a major mural project.
Yeah.
I know it's not in your slide deck, but do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. I could like bring that up too, actually. Let me see here. So this is the mural. And this is my other presentation. This is the Stay Golden mural that I worked on with Gerald A. Brown and Roberto Lugo. And it was sponsored by the Mural Arts program in Philadelphia. And the mural is located at 33rd and Diamond in Philadelphia. And it was inspired by the Black Lives Matter street paintings are going on all over the country. And this one in particular was like a response to a street painting that went horribly wrong, I guess, where there was this like Black pastor from Philadelphia and this white police sergeant that organized a street painting. And they had it had a street painting that said "End Racism," and then it had all the names of like recent victims of police violence, or at least the famous ones, like Tamir Rice, and George Floyd, and so they had like, I don't know, 20 something names up there, and it said "End Racism," and then they had the community come out and paint the street, which all sounds nice and well, but the like police sergeant and this pastor basically were using it as a photo op, because they had a bunch of like media show up and they took pictures of them painting this thing together. And then as soon as this thing was done painted and everybody went home, they told the firefighters to come out and like try to blast the street painting off of the street with their hoses. And so like, which they couldn't end up doing because the paint was like too good. It was like, the paint was like too good to do that. It was like this just like really like left a terrible, like, it was like bitter taste in my mouth. I was just like, we were just like really mad about this. Because we had also showed up to help paint, and we were like throwing pots on the side of it. It was like this community event. And then it was also happening in this like very like gentrified part of Philadelphia that used to be like Black, Hispanic, working class, and now it's like gentrified. And so I don't know. And the whole thing just felt, really terrible. And then we were there to like basically support it and like help out. Not knowing the full context of what was happening. And then, so then like, Roberto was just like, yo, like, let's do our own street painting. Like, let's do it the right way. Like, cause that was bullshit. And we were like, Gerald and I were like, hell yes, let's do something. So then Roberto brought the idea to the Mural Arts, Philadelphia. And Jane Golden, the person who runs that program, was just like, yeah, like, let's do something. And so Gerald and I, we designed this mural, and we got a team together, and we painted it. And it was like this really crazy process. And it was something that we didn't go through like, the normal channels. It was kind of just like this like side project that we kind of just were able to execute. And this was like one picture of me painting. This is the picture of the mural. It's at 33rd and Diamond. And I think it's just funny because like this house next door is like, looks like it's just like cut in half, which is like very Philly. But yeah, so you can kind of see, and it's right across the street from this playground. And in the space that it's in front of also is like this garden that is like a local like plant, like wild plant pollinator. It's like a pollinator garden. So it's like, it's kind of cool because like organizers in Strawberry Mansion neighborhood, which was where this is located, they kept a big apartment building for being built there because they're really trying to fend off like gentrification in this neighborhood as well. So they kind of won that battle, turned it into this garden, this green space, and then now adding this mural, it's kind of really recreated this corner of this neighborhood, and it's right across the street from this playground, so kids can see it every day. And yeah, I think it's a really busy street right here, so people can see it going to and from work and stuff like that. So it was just like a really incredible opportunity, and we're just like really happy to been a part of it. And then also that fist in the middle is from like a photo that I took at one of the protests, like at the very first day of protests. So I kind of just like turned that into like a whatchamacallit image. Yeah.
Isaac, we've got a question in the chat.
Oh, this is our crew that we put together.
Nice.
And that's Gerald, that's right, to my right or our left, And that was the crew that we put together. It was really fun. It was a fun experience.
Thank you.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question, that's okay. The question in the chat is about your plans after grad school.
Oh yeah.
No pressure.
Well, I don't really know. I don't know. I would really like to do some kind of residency overseas somewhere.
Nice.
I would like to get out of the country for a bit. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm just kind of like focused on my thesis show, and then yeah, maybe this summer I'll have more time to think through exactly. I was looking at this like one, it's like this one thing. It's in Siena, Italy, I believe. Yeah, I was thinking about doing like a what you would call it, like a residency there. It's like a 3-month residency. But yeah, I was thinking about that. We'll see what happens after that. I'm not sure.
Cool. Folks, do we have more questions? I noticed in some of your photos, at least the first ones in your slide deck, were in black and white, and then at some point you had switched to color. Was that on purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, so like basically, at the beginning of like me taking photos, of the protest specifically, capturing everything and making sure, like, I wanted to be very specific on what people were focused on. Like what was your eye being drawn to and focused on in the, like, what was the subject I was wanting people to zone in on in the pictures. And the easiest way to do that, and also the easiest way to edit the photos, especially because I was going through like 1,000 photos in like one day, and then having to like go through and edit those down, was to do it in black and white. It was like partly, it was, I think, primarily practical. But it also has this feel of like, obviously visually connects it to like older photographs. Just thinking about like the photos of like, the March at Selma, or the bus boycotts and stuff like that, like those old school photos. Like it just connects it back to that. But then, as I kept going and I got better at editing and quicker at it, I wanted to play around with color and stuff. And I think, so like this one, I was like, to really capture the energy of this moment is you have to have the red, white, and blue. Like you have to. You can't have like a black and white Trump Pence sign and still have it hold the same kind of energy, that like visceral reaction that people have to these objects. You can't have it without the color. Like, and so I was like, I brought down all the other colors so that it would just like it like these red, white, and blue signs would just pop, you know. And so that was definitely an intentional thing. Like same here, like I just wanted people to like it just they really know how to ruin these colors for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I wanted to do that. And then also like certain photos, you just can't capture the energy and the life of a moment without having the color. Like this photo edited in black and white just doesn't hold the same amount of life and energy and like joy that like the black and white, just a little bit more serious. And then these, I just think that these were also just like, this day was just like super bright and just like, and even though it was like a really dark, serious subject, it just felt right to have these in color still. There's also a better camera than I was using before. Bought a new camera. But like, yeah, I think it's just a matter of like the subject and what I'm trying to bring forward.
I love that one with the green shirt right in the front.
Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something, it feels big like some of the other photos you did with big crowds, but in a slightly more personal way, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely.
Yeah, and this is like one of the organizers in town. His name's Chris, and he's one of him and his friends came together and they made this group called I Will Breathe. And this again is a dude who just like, he wasn't an organizer. And he like he was one of these guys that was just coming out and just making sure the protests kept going, especially during that first week. When the other organizations weren't putting on these big rallies, but they would just like keep them going. And just one of these like young organizers that like just made sure the energy stayed alive, that momentum kept going, and then end up creating a group that now does a lot of great work in the community, and they keep on putting on events and stuff. And their Instagram is just like I Will Breathe or something. I can like look it up and share this. But yeah, they be doing stuff in the community all the time. Yeah, it's just I Will Breathe, one word, _. Yeah, that's their IG.
Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, it's crazy time. And then basically like going back to school, like I was just only doing clay because I hadn't gotten to touch clay in like almost a year. So it was just like, yeah, I didn't really take any photos like during the course of the semester.
Sure.
Just wanted to dive back in.
And so now you're currently mainly working in clay again, prepping for your thesis show, yeah? Yeah.
But I think I'll have like photos in that thesis. I will have photos in that thesis show as well. But yeah, especially for this semester, I was just like, just want to dig back into the clay stuff. Yeah.
Do we have any final questions or comments for Isaac? All right. Isaac, before I wrap up, do you want to say anything, any last words?
No, I think just like thank you guys for having me. This was like super awesome and fun, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Isaac, for being with us. I'm really appreciative of your candor and your transparency. I think you are an incredible multi-skilled artist. I cannot wait to see what you do next, whatever it is and wherever it is. I do want to thank one more time our funders, our foundations, and our sponsors, the Fine Foundation, Bridgeway Capital, the Creative Business Accelerator, Simpson and McCready, and Standard Ceramics. We are grateful for their support in making this happen. And then,
oh, I do want to say something.
Yeah, please.
I do have something to say. Go give your money to Pot LA. Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I would say. And then
Are they on GoFundMe?
Yes, they have a GoFundMe. If you go through, yeah, if you go to my I have like a link tree, and you can access it through that.
It has it through your link.
If you go, there's on my account, you can go. Yes, and then Pot LA GoFundMe. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you can you can also donate on their website. They're taking donations directly from their website if you want it to be tax deductible. So they're doing that as well. And then you can donate here on their GoFundMe. And then and it's just like this great space in LA that's catering specifically to Blacks and LGBTQ community and the young community there. And yeah, it's just like a very unique space that I want to see grow, and I want to see more studios in the country like it.
Yeah.
There's a way more studios like this to exist. And being someone who really came up not through the academic world, but through public studios like this, not like this. I wish it was through public studios like this, but the regular public studios, it's just a bunch of old white women. It's very exciting to see this, that a studio like this exists, and I want to make sure that they are able to make it through the end of this pandemic stretch. So them, and then also if you have a little extra money, you can donate some money to the Philadelphia. Oh God, I'm forgetting names right now. Community Bail Fund, Philadelphia Community Bail Fund, which literally just pays the bail for the cash bail for people who are incarcerated in Philadelphia, especially people who can't afford to pay their bail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my go-tos.
So just to reiterate, that's Pot LA and
Yes.
the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund.
Yeah.
Support them. And if you don't already, follow Isaac Scott on Instagram. He has 2 channels. This _is_ceramics, and this is Photography 2020. We still have a little bit of Mother of All Pottery sales left. You can see the upcoming demonstration for tomorrow with our artist in resident, Eva Conrad. And of course, there is an online shop doing local pottery sales at union-project.square.site. And as Isaac said, support Pot_LA and the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. And you can go even further than that. If you're not in Philly, or if you have a city that you really love and want to support that community, there are a lot of community bail funds, and there are probably a handful of other ceramic studios that are primarily focused on making ceramics accessible for Brown, Black, and Indigenous people. So look further.
Indeed. Yeah.
So thank you, folks. It was great to be with you, and thank you again, Isaac.
Thanks, guys. you later.
Bye, folks.